You almost done it?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Okay, great. So, yeah, everyone just have Unity open, start a new project, and then we'll get started as soon as you're in. If you're not using a mouse, I would recommend that you bind your right part of your touchpad as right click. Most people usually have right click on Mac, like with the double tap. You need like an easy way to do right click. It just makes things easier. So the reason we do right click is because in this main 3D view, when you hold right click, you look around like this. So that's like pretty much the primary mode of navigating around here. And also when you hold right click, then you can use the WASD keys to do this, to move like in and out like this, kind of like a first person shooter game. So that's the easiest way to navigate around. What other people do too, and it works, you could scroll, you can use the mouse wheel and the middle mouse button to pan around, but I personally don't recommend navigating around like that. This is just a much easier way to rotate around and to look around your objects. So yeah, just if you're in the Unity editor right now, just play around with that a little bit. Just try to kind of, hold right click in the viewport, and while holding right click, use the WASD key. So W is forward, S is backwards, A is left, D is right. To just kind of like go around like this. And then when you get comfortable with that, I'll start explaining what some of the other things here are. Yeah, so just start a new project, and let me know when you're in the same place. Just new project. Yep, and you just name it something like VR Bootcamp 1. Okay, so when you're in this view, so let me explain what the main parts of the program are. So this is the scene view, the 3D view, where most of the stuff that you're going to see is happening. Then try to click, like if you click on supposedly like this light, for example, or like the main camera, what's going to, yeah, just give it a sec, it'll start.
Yeah, it's a bit before.
Yeah, so like I said, so right click, you hold right click and you can pan around, and then you can use the WASD to move around. So if you click on something like the camera here, for example, you'll notice that it kind of appears these arrows. So you can use those arrows to move objects around in a scene. They're pretty self-explanatory. They're color-coded for the X, Y, and Z axes. Then I want you to look over here. So while you have something like the camera clicked, you'll notice that it also gets highlighted over here in the top left, which is the hierarchy. So the hierarchy is kind of like everything that you have in your scene currently. So right now all we have is a camera and a light. And that's why over here on the left you'll see main camera and directional light. So it's interchangeable whether you click the object in 3D or whether you click it over here in a hierarchy. It's just like another way of finding what's currently in the scene. So while having like something like the main camera selected, or actually, you know what, better yet, the directional light. So if you just click on this light, you'll see the direction that it's kind of facing in. So I want you to look over here in the top left of the program. You'll see a bunch of tools here. So right now you should probably have the move tool selected. Switch to the next one, which is the rotate tool. So if you click on the rotate tool, you'll notice that the gizmos kind of changed. So is everyone kind of seeing that? This kind of spherical gizmo up here in the top left. So if you just didn't see where I switched the tool. So when you have the rotate tool selected, you notice it's a little bit different from the move tool, where the move tool has these pull arrows. Rotate tool has kind of like these rotation axes, like so. So the way that you rotate is, most people usually just kind of grab it right here. That works, but it's a pretty imprecise way of rotating, because you don't really know which direction you're doing it in. The proper way to rotate is to try to pull by these lines, these little color-coded lines. That way you'll limit your rotation to one specific axis. So, try to do something like make the sun, a little bit towards the horizon, for example. Like that. What's going on? Yeah, sure. What's going on? Okay, so hold right click in the scene and then do your other hand to do WASD to move in and out. Yeah.
How do you flip it?
What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you hold right click and you look up. You get it? So when you're holding a right click, that's like free look mode, basically. And then the WASD is like the moving around. So that's something that, it takes a little bit of a learning curve, but it's super important to be really comfortable with navigating around. And I mean, I do it just for fun. Literally, I just hold right click and I just do this. I just like go around. And you can go faster by holding shift too. So you can go really fast like that. And that's just practice, but practice makes perfect. And just kind of like the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get with navigating around in 3D space. That's why I told you to do the binding on the right click, because it's much easier to access the right click. I know it's a little bit harder when you're using a trackpad, but it still works. So yeah, I mean, taking something like an object like this, you can move it, rotate it, and then we'll come back to these tools in a second. So now what I want you to look at is up here at the top, menus. You see file, edit, assets, game object. I want you to look at game object specifically. And in there, you'll see a list of game objects you can create, like 3D objects, 2D objects, lights, etc. So we specifically want right now is a plane. So just go to 3D object, game object, 3D object, and then click plane. And then what you should get is something like this. It's like a little plane gets created in your scene. So while having that plane selected, you could click back to like the move tool, for example. A shortcut for the move tool is just W. If you just press W, it'll switch to the move tool. And now you can move this plane around in 3D space. What I want you to look at now though is, so we did the move tool and the rotate tool, right? So you can rotate the plane around and stuff. Then the next one is the scale tool. So the third one right here, you'll notice that's what the gizmos look like. So all the way in the top left is where you switch to the scale tool. And then see, you can scale in one direction, or in all of them equally. So the way you scale with all of them is you pull by the middle, whereas in one direction you pull just kind of one thing. It's very similar to Blender, right? It's pretty much the same thing. Now, here's the cool thing, right? So I want you to pay attention when you click on this plane, right? And when you click away, for example, notice on the right side here, this whole inspector area is empty, right? So what's the inspector? So when you click on something like the plane, the inspector over here on the right gives you all the properties of that object you currently have selected. So does everyone see this area over here? Now notice when let's say you grab like the move tool, for example, and you move this plane, let's say up, notice how the Y in the top left here, so this, I want you to look at this number over here. Notice how that's moving depending on how you move the plane. Everyone see that up there? What's going on? Oh, because you're in the scale tool. Just click it. I think maybe this is. Oh, did the program freeze?
I don't know what's going on. It just stopped on me.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm doing something wrong.
No, I think it just froze. Yeah, just restart it. But yeah, so I'll take it slow. But the inspector over here, you notice that we have position, rotation, and scale. And I notice that's called transform. So that's a term that you're going to see really often in Unity and in 3D in general is the transform. So every object in Unity has a transform, especially the 3D ones. Even some non-existing objects still have a transform, but that doesn't matter. But in this instance, every 3D object has a position, a rotation, and a scale. It's just how the whole thing is laid out, and it makes it much simpler to arrange scenes in a cohesive way. So, not only can you move things around like manually like this visually, you can also edit the numbers directly up here. So let's say I want this plane to be like at the 0 point of my world. I'll just edit these numbers here. I'll just do 0, 0, 0. Just type it in right there. And that'll put my plane to the 0 point. So if you click on the plane and you just kind of zero out the positions over there. Now you can also modify the scale. So in this instance, I want the scale to be a little bit bigger because what we're going to use this plane is going to be basically like our floor for the first scene that we're going to create. So let's change the scale of our plane up here in the inspector to something like 5 by 5 by 5. And make it a lot bigger like that.
What does the Y do?
So since the plane is infinitely thin, it's a plane. It's literally like a perfect plane. That's why the Y doesn't do anything to the plane. But if it was something like a cube, it would scale it, and you'll see that just in a moment. So that's kind of like the rough basics of Unity. You basically have the 3D view. The hierarchy tells you in a list of what you currently have in objects. Now we have a plane as well. And then when you have an object selected, this right side gives you all the properties of the object that you currently have selected. So now we're going to step out of Unity for a second. And I want you to just open your favorite web browser, whatever that may be. And I want you to Google something like grass texture. Just Google it. And you go to images. Now, I want you to kind of find one that looks, square. That's not like a rectangular one. I feel like, I don't know, whichever one you kind of like. Some of them have watermarks. It doesn't really matter. We're just kind of doing a little test project. But just pick a grass texture that you like and save it to your desktop. Let me know when everyone's got that grass texture they like. It doesn't actually have to be a grass texture. You could make it a dirt texture. It's up to you. But we're just, I like grass, so I do grass. So let me know when everyone has that grass texture on their desktop. There's something on Google.
I have a question.
Yes.
Each of you want to download any other images, does the resolution have to be high?
I mean, it's up to you how quality you want it to be. It doesn't have to be huge. And this is just an example right now, so when you have that grass texture on your desktop, what I want you to do with that is I want you to grab it and I'll pull it in this bottom part of Unity called the project view. So this whole area right here. So just put it in there and you'll see it just loads it up like that. This is a huge texture. It shouldn't be that fast. It shouldn't be that slow. So everyone got their grass texture in? Yeah? Alright, cool. So then I want you to take that grass texture here from the inside Unity and then just drag it onto this plane. Just like that. Just drag it and let go. And you'll see that the grass texture gets applied. What else you'll notice is that when you do that, it creates a folder. They're called materials right next to the grass texture. It'll just automatically do that. The reason is because we kind of did it in like a cheap way. We literally dragged the texture onto the object. So it automatically created a material for us. But I'll explain exactly what the materials are and how they work. So you'll notice that, since this plane is really big, the grass texture is very scaled up. It's kind of, very, very pixelated. So one quick way to fix that is when you click the plane, you'll notice over here on the inspector, now you'll see right here it says grass. So I want you to just open that. That's the material of the object, that little sphere right there. Just open that right there in the corner, and you'll see a bunch of other settings here come up. You'll notice our grass texture sits right here in what something is called albedo, which in CG terms it basically means like the color of the object, the diffuse. So the final the lighting color of it. Specifically, which part I want you to look at is over here where it says tiling. You see tiling? It says 1 by 1. So let's make it 5 by 5, just like how we made our plane a 5 by 5. And you'll notice that then it'll multiply the texture and it'll basically tile it, which gives you kind of like some extra details. Not technically, but it looks a little bit better.
So I'm a little behind. How do I?
Yeah.
What do I create in assets?
So did you pull your grass texture in here?
No. How do I do it?
So you just grab it from the desktop or from wherever and just pull it in this bottom part right here in the project view.
You don't use the create.
No, usually most workflows you just drag and drop. You pull it in. So yeah, just let me know if you're stuck. I'll come around.
Did you change the name to grass or no?
It was just when I downloaded it off Google, it was just called that. Yeah. Depends on what texture you pick.
Can you change the name inside?
So the way that you rename it is you just kind of click lightly on the name right there, and then it'll just after a second it will kind of let you rename it. Yeah.
We don't get a 5 by 5 tile.
Yes. So when you have the plane selected, the material of the object always shows up here at the bottom of the inspector. So you want to kind of open that, and then in there are all the material properties. Now you notice it has other things here like smoothness, for example. You see the smoothness changes, the smoothness of the object, the metallic. We won't play with that just yet, but in a little bit we'll cover that as well. So does everyone have this grassy plane now kind of like on here? Good. So again, while I'm talking and you're watching on projector, just like get used to kind of holding this right click and just kind of going around the scene. Just get really comfortable with moving around, and just always make sure to use this WASD. It's very important. That's the part that actually moves the camera. The right click just lets you look around. So if you need to look up, you just push your mouse up or down, and you just kind of navigate around just like that. So we have our grass, so we're able to import something very simple and put it, and now we have like a nice 3D plane in here in Unity. So this is like the simplest way to, what's up? What happened?
It's just everything's. I can't find it in the picture.
It's just, anything could work really. That one's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it downloaded it, but I don't know what it is on my end. So I'm just going through it all again.
Yeah, so just, download it anywhere, on the desktop is usually easiest. Good. Oh wait, we're not going to game yet.
Okay.
Touch screen.
Oh, really?
It's like, where is the mouse?
Yeah, since the last class, you already pulled the game down in there. I'm gonna teach that in just a little bit. Yeah, just kind of, I would just recommend just window it, and then just pull it down there somewhere. Just, if you don't,
What's happening?
just pull the screen, like make the window smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then just pull it to the desktop. It's way easier. Just pull it to the desktop. You can use like Chrome. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Alright, cool.
And then just pull it in Unity. Same thing. Just kind of make it a little bit smaller. It's yeah, because it was already big. Just click it again, and then just pull it. You know what I mean? I think it's yeah. Yeah, try to do it for you. Yeah, you can do it. Always do it like this too. Yeah. So then just take that and pull it there in the project. Yeah, and then take it from there and then pull it onto the plane.
There you go.
Yep. And then click the plane. And then open the material. Yeah. And then go scroll down, and you can move the window back to the middle. Yeah, and then just scroll down and scroll down. Yeah, and then just find where it says tiling and do like 5x5 or whatever your preference is. You see the texture gets tiled. All right.
Thanks.
Cool. So now let's create another object. So go to game object up here in the top menus. So whenever you want to create these are called primitives. Most 3D programs have just basic primitives, cubes, spheres, and stuff like that. Let's make a sphere. So create a sphere, and you just see a sphere just like that. Yeah, that's fine. So just kind of move your camera, like kind of your viewport closer to it, just like that. So hold right click and then just move W. Yeah. All right. So now for this one, let's find another texture for this. For this one, I'm gonna let you just pick whatever texture you want. Something like, I don't know. I'm gonna just Google a brick texture, but anything you want. It could be a picture. It could be anything you want. So just any picture you want. Once you have it, pull it into your project. Another way, if you don't really want to pull it in, you can also always right click here in the project and import new asset, and then it also lets you use a file browser, and then you can do it like that as well. Yes, you could right click here in the project and import new asset, and it will give you like a file browser if it's easier. So there's always multiple ways to do things in Unity. So everyone got the picture they like? just gonna give it 30 more seconds, 1 more minute. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, it's just like a little test. So,
It's not showing up on the thing as a touch.
oh, what is that then? No, if it doesn't show up there, then it's not. Right click it, or you can do that too. What file type was that? Oh,
Maybe it's a file.
strange. Yeah, try to. That is a little weird. Usually Unity supports all the file types, but if you happen to have found one that it doesn't, that's interesting.
It keeps glitching. So
Is there? No. Just try to find another picture. I don't know what it seems to be.
yeah, it's okay.
You just find something else. It won't let you pull straight from the browser like that.
Yeah, download it first.
I don't like a few pictures.
See, I'm using it.
Nice one. Yeah, so just save it. And then we go into Unity. Should work, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I'm not sure, it might have been something with the file type. So when you have that, now instead of just don't pull it onto the sphere, like I showed you earlier, that's just like a quick way to do it. I wanted to show you the proper way to do it, right? So here in the project, I want you to right click and go to the top where it says create. So, you're going to be using this quite a lot in Unity. This is kind of where you create a lot of these Unity assets. So I want you to specifically find material. So create material, and it's going to say new material. Just name it something like, sphere. That's going to be the material for your sphere. And then just press enter or whatever, and then you should just see kind of like this white sphere material, which just means it's blank. So now let me explain just the difference between a texture and a material, right? So a texture is just the picture, is just like the color information, whereas a material is how that texture is actually used on the object. Is it used in conjunction? Is it tiled? That's like the material is like the settings of the texture, basically, if you think about it that way. So they're different. They can be a little confusing because they seem similar, but they're different. So we just created a blank material. Now if you click that material, you'll see here in the inspector, it'll tell you again all the properties of that material. So now what I want you to do is to take that new texture that you just picked and pull it into this albedo right here, this slot. Another way of doing that is also you can click this little circle icon, if you just notice right here, right next to albedo, and it'll show you the browser of everything you have in Unity currently. And you can also pick it that way. So there's multiple ways to do it. You can pull it in there, or you can click that and kind of search through. Searching through is fine now, but if you have like a really big complex project, sometimes that could be daunting, so dragging is easier. But as long as you know both ways to do it, it'll be a lot easier.
Where does the view show up? If I always click the sphere.
Yeah, so don't click the sphere. I want you to click the material that we created. Yeah, that's right. So the material is that little white sphere right there. You see that? Yeah, that's the material you just created.
That's this.
And then, no, it's not. I know they look similar and it's a little confusing, but it's not. It's just a blank material.
Yeah, drag this thing
to albedo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, this sphere that you have right here is located here. It says sphere up there. Whereas this is just the material. Now, the sphere material, notice, and you don't have to follow me in this, but I can take it and look, I can put it on this, I can put it on that, I can put it on anything I want, right? So that's what a material is, basically. It's like the object's material, basically. So that's the proper way to import a texture and to create a material instead of just kind of dragging the texture onto the object. That's why I created this materials folder. If you go in there, you'll just see grass 01 because it created that grass material automatically when you pulled it in.
So what's the benefit? What's the drawback of just dragging it?
There isn't one, but say it already maybe has a material or something. Maybe it's a multi-material object and stuff. It could get a little messy. You might pull it in on the wrong thing or something like that.
So you can apply several materials to one object?
Yep, if you in your 3D modeling package, if you exported it with multiple materials, yeah, you can. So now I'm going to teach you some more cool things with this material stuff, right? So does everyone have their sphere with their favorite picture that they picked? Yeah? All right. So now what I want you to do, right, is, so this is a little trick. Usually people don't really teach you this, but it's very easy and it's very useful in my opinion. So what I want you to do is I want you to right click that new picture that you just got. And if you're on Mac, it'll say Show in Finder. If you're on Windows, it'll say Show in Explorer. So just click that Show in Explorer when you right-click that picture that you've just imported there in the project. And it'll open up the folder where your actual project is located on your computer, where your assets are. So in there, you'll see a bunch of these files. And these meta files. The meta files, you don't really touch those. Those are just Unity specific settings. But what I want you to do right now is with this picture that you imported, I want you to just duplicate it. So just, Control C, Control V, or, Command C, Command V. Just copy and paste it. You literally just make a duplicate of it right there. And then the copy, I want you to call it, instead of copy, say normal. You don't have to, but just for difference's sake. So one is called something, and the other one is called something normal. Now the reason why we're using the word normal is because we're going to turn this picture through Unity into a quick normal map. So when you have this, so has everyone got the two files? Now you just click back into Unity, give it a second, and then you'll see that it updated it, and now there's two pictures there. So just remember that whatever you do in the actual project folder on your computer, if you pull a new picture in there or whatever, you go back into Unity, Unity will search through everything and it'll put the things where they're supposed to be, basically. So everything that you do in Unity, all the files that you move around, all the folders that you make are actually mirrored in the actual folder in your documents.
But I noticed I reading my original document, my original image, and it took it away from that. It moved it from the object.
Oh, because you renamed the original?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
So just take it over.
Yeah.
Got to do.
That's weird. Yeah, you need to pull it back in there. I think. Yeah, I lost the link. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. So now this duplicated object, the second one, right? When you click the texture, you'll notice in the inspector. So every, whether it's a 3D object that you're clicking, whether it's a material, whether it's a texture, each specific game object type or asset has its own settings. So a texture, so like a picture from Google, for example, if you import it, it'll have a bunch of settings here, like the max size, the compression and stuff. We're not going to touch any of that right now. What I want you to specifically look at is up here, this top drop down. So once you select the texture that you just cloned, so the copy of it, right? And in the texture type up here, just select normal map. You see that? Where it says default, texture type default. We don't want the default, we want a normal map. And then there's a little check mark right here called create from grayscale. So what that's basically going to do, it's going to make this picture black and white, and it's going to make like detect the bumpiness of the texture basically. And then this bumpiness that shows up right here when you have that check marked on, make that really low. That bumpiness should be like 0.00, or a very tiny number.
This is on the copy texture.
Yep.
Is it supposed to make it black and white?
So when you do apply,
Oh, okay.
it will make it a normal map like that.
Okay.
So apply should show up right here in the corner. Once you have it, you have those settings, normal map, create from grayscale, bumpiness really low, and then you should see that it kind of turned it purple like this. So now what I want you to do is I want you to click on your sphere material over here in the bottom, just this material right here, and take that purple texture, the normal map one, and pull it up where it says normal map, right there. So just the purple texture, the normal map texture, pull it in the material, not in albedo this time, but in normal map. So is everyone got that?
And what is that?
So now I'm going to show you what that actually does, right? So I'm just going to tile mine a little bit. You might not have to do yours because, maybe some people have bigger textures than mine. But what that basically does is, now let me show you. So if I bump the smoothness of this up, you'll start to see that. So if you just kind of play with these settings here, the smoothness and stuff. Now, if you look at without the normal map, it's flat like that. With it, it's got this extra definition. You see that? That's with a normal map, that's without one. So what that basically lets it do, so you don't have to follow this, but I'm just going to rotate my light around so you can see what the effect is. It actually, you can see kind of like the reflection is actually now going off the rock. You see that? Whereas if I don't have that, it just kind of like, it's very flat. Doesn't really do it how it should. Whereas when I have the normal map, it kind of, you see how it knows that that's a bump right there? You see that? Notice. So it knows that that's like a crevice between them, and it just gives your object just that little bit of more of extra detail. So that's like the most basic kind of like material that you just created. It has an albedo and a normal map, and you can tweak these smoothness settings. See, if I put the smoothness all the way up, it almost becomes kind of reflective, metallic in the smoothness. If you put it all the way up, it practically becomes reflective like that. Now see, if there's no normal map, that's what it's going to look like. See, it's got no definition on the rock. Whereas if you have that, then you have this kind of like bumpiness there.
So you can only do normal map onto like a material, like the ball thing.
Yeah, so one material can contain multiple textures. So that's what a material does, is you kind of bring in a bunch of your assets, and you kind of you tweak and you make sure that the material of your object looks how you want it. And usually you achieve that with multiple textures, like we did with 2 now.
So if you wanted it to have like that rocky appearance, but you want it to be just purple.
Yeah, yeah. So if I got rid of this albedo, see, look at that. But we still have the bumpiness here. See that?
How do you get rid of the just to see the comment?
Oh, you see the next to the normal map right there? There's a 1. If you make that a 0, that's like the amount of bumpiness. So you can make that 5 or 10. That's like really the amount of bumpiness. You can also click and drag that too here. So you see that?
What's the highest I think you do?
I mean, you can make it like 100, but then you see that's what happens. Like it just the graphics card doesn't really know what to do with a high number like that. It'll just look bad. But yeah, it's really fun if you put the metallic all the way up and the smoothness all the way up, or not all the way up, but just like slightly close to all the way up. You'll see that it almost becomes reflective. So now these are just kind of like, we're working with primitives, planes, spheres, and we're pulling some textures off of Google. It's very basic stuff, but it's great to kind of understand how this stuff works. So let's see here. Now what I wanted to show you guys is another big part of the Unity editor, which is the asset store, right? So, for now, let's just save our scene. So the way that you do that, you can either do Control S or you can do File, Save Scene As. So if you do Control S, it'll tell you save your scene. Now don't leave your project folder. Like, don't be tempted to save the scene on the desktop or something like that. Just save it right there where, in the assets folder, right there where it wants you to save it. And just call this like test or something like that. And you'll notice that it will kind of make this little Unity icon right there. So that's called a scene file. And I'll explain in a moment what that does. So now that we have this, now what I want you to do is go to File. So yeah, just let me know when everyone's got that. Everyone saved their scene? Yep. Okay. So go to File, New Scene. And you'll see that everything just disappears. And just, again, as a quick test, just make like, a plane again. Don't put any material on it or anything, just like that. Just as long as something is there. And then do the same thing, Control S, save the scene, call it test 2, something like that. Right? So now, down here, you'll have test and you have test 2. So now if you double click test, you'll see that it opens up the scene that you had earlier, you created. And test 2 is this new scene that you just created with the plane, right? So that's what a scene file is. Basically, a scene file saves all of the settings and lighting and everything that you kind of have in that world that you currently created, and it gets saved like that as a scene file. And then you can create like something like a new scene, work with that, back up your old scene if you have some things that you maybe want to change, but you want to keep an old version of it. Scene files are basically what hold all of these arranged objects, how you have them. Their scale, their rotation, their materials, everything pretty much. So if you open the new scene that we just created, test 2, now I want to teach you just a little bit about the asset store, right? So the asset store can be accessed either by clicking up here, which is where it usually shows up. See, we have scene, game, asset store. If you don't have a Unity account, it might ask you to make one. Not sure if it does or not. If your asset store looks like this, it doesn't have that side on the right, that's because it's not like scaled enough. If the screen's too small and it can't do that, that's fine. But usually I think the Unity editor will let you scale it enough for that. But yeah, that's one of the other great things about the Unity editor is that you could pretty much rearrange your whole workspace, the sizes of windows and everything, and we'll get to rearranging some of that stuff in a little bit. But yeah, the asset store is filled with lots and lots of both paid and free assets, everything from environments, characters, houses, scripts, many things. So just like for this kind of test, I just want to teach you how to like pull something off the asset store and do something with it. So I always just love coming in here and just seeing what they have. So if you click on something like 3D models over here on the right,
Look at that.
yeah, it's like, it's usually you have to just kind of scale this, make sure just this left and right side are scaled enough, so it's wide enough to fit the sidebar.
I don't mind though.
You know what, if it doesn't, then just type 3D models in the search bar. And then the maximum price, all this, just click free only right there. So one of the first ones that shows up to me is these metal barrels. You guys see that?
No.
Metal barrel. So how about this? In the asset store, let's just search metal barrel. So there's a bunch of them. And then make sure you just click the free only thing. So there's actually quite a lot of free assets on the asset store. So I would say select this one. First one that shows up. Does everyone see this?
Yep.
So just click that. And you'll see a download button right there. Click download. And it'll download it. And then you should be given a window like this. Once you click the download button. So this is the import Unity package dialog. It'll kind of tell you all of the the folder and the materials and pictures that are coming with this asset. Usually by default everything's selected and you just click import. But just so you know, you can pick and choose the things you want to import into your project from here. And that's usually helpful if you have these giant packages that you're importing.
So these are all the different little elements that make it
The metal barrel, basically.
cool.
So just import that metal barrel. And for me here, I made a folder called barrel. You know what? Let's go back to the scene that we were tweaking earlier. I think it looks nicer. So just click back to your first test scene. Let's put the barrels in there.
So you go to barrel material.
So you have the barrel folder here, right? So I'll show you how to pull it in right now. So just go back to your old scene, the one with the grass and the sphere.
Okay.
Double click the scene file down
Oh,
there.
right,
You have the
okay.
test file. Is that it, right? You're in there?
Yep.
Okay. So now double click that barrel folder and you'll see there's 4 folders. There's materials, models, prefabs, and textures. Okay. Specifically what we always look for in an asset is prefabs. Prefabs are short for prefabricated objects. So what a prefab is basically it's the object with the material, the model, everything on it, ready to roll like a barrel. So you'll see it's kind of like a blue cube like this. It says barrel. Just drag it out of there into your scene and you should see the barrel right there with the materials and textures and everything already kind of set.
Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, so just the barrel folder, prefabs, barrel, yeah, right? So now prefabs are super useful. They basically save all the settings of your object the way that you want it. So I want you to just go back to the top level of your project here. It says assets, just so you can see everything here. And just to clean it up, I want you to take the sphere material and put it in the materials folder where it belongs. Everyone got that? This is a matter of preference. Some people I know make texture folders. I just put it in the materials folder too. Just put all your textures in the materials folder, just to keep it clean.
Even a sphere.
That's the material, yeah. Alright, so now what I want you to do before we make a prefab is quickly, I also want you to make a cube. So go to game object, 3D object, cube. Just because I feel like since I made that sphere, it looks so similar to the material of the sphere that it might confuse some of you between a prefab and a material. It's just a cube like this. If it shows up under the ground, or if it's not visible, it might be that it's like out of the scene. So just pull it up to where it's visible somewhere. Okay, and then go into materials and put that sphere material, the same thing that you put on the sphere, onto the cube. What about that? So you guys got this cube here, like that?
Yeah.
All right. So now I teach you how to make a prefab, right? So again, prefab, short for prefabricated object. Let's say this sphere and this cube are like objects, you like them, you got the settings on them that you want to save those objects. So here's how you do it, right? When you click the sphere, over here in the hierarchy, you should see it also highlighted, sphere. So that's the object, basically, the link to it. So pull it from here, from the hierarchy, into the project view, and just let it go right there. And you should see that a prefab gets created. So just click it.
I can't find it. Over there.
Yeah. So either click it there, or you can always find it here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then go to the top level of your assets, and then just pull it in there, the sphere. Not the physically in 3D.
Oh.
Yeah, because in 3D you're actually moving it around in the world, right?
Yeah.
The hierarchy. So this is like the list view, really, where like your objects really are in kind of relatively to each other.
Is there something that you can punch in where it just sits on the...
You want it to be right on the object. So one way to do it is you can double click any object in here, and it kind of goes to it. See that?
Oh no, I'm saying like to get a position like right on the plane.
There are like snap tools. I don't use it that much. We might cover that a little bit later, but just kind of like move it till where it seems like it is.
If you do 0, 0, 0, it'll go to like the ground central, right?
Yeah, because it's usually the origin is in the middle of the object. That's why. But don't worry about it being too low, because we're gonna do physics in a little bit, and it'll fall to the ground anyway. So yeah, do the same thing with the cube. Also make it a prefab. Just kind of pull the cube. So when I tell you how to make a prefab, what does that mean? You click it over here in the hierarchy, and you pull it into your project, and now you've basically saved that 3D object with all its settings. You get that?
Replicate it. It's much easier.
Yeah. So now you can grab it from there and make more of them like that. See? So that's a prefab basically. You could just undo to go back to. So just to keep things organized, in the assets, right click, create a folder, and let's call it prefabs.
In assets.
Yeah. And then once you have that created, take these two prefabs that we just created, put them in a prefabs folder. Just to keep things organized. Okay, everyone got that? Cool. All right, so now let's do something fun, all right? So we're gonna do a little bit of physics, and it's very easy to do in Unity. But before I do that, I just have to explain the concept of a component real quick. So, I'll do a little bit here on the whiteboard. So you remember how every game object in Unity, so you have a game object. Okay, so every game object has a transform, right? And the transform is X, Y, Z, position, rotation, scale, right? Other things that game objects have are components. Now, transform is actually a component. It's a type of component, but it comes with every game object, so it's almost like it's just like a default component. But then you'll notice, some game objects have more than one component. So if you see like over there on the right, you see where it says transform in the inspector at the top. So each kind of chunk here, so each thing here is a component. So every time you make a game object, Unity comes with this transform. But sometimes they have these other components. So usually you don't really worry about these. They kind of just come with every 3D object has a mesh renderer, for example. That's what makes it actually show up. Now notice if I click the cube and I disable the mesh renderer, that's what happens. See? It just it disappears. It's still actually there, but just it's not being drawn on the graphics card. And that's gonna come in handy a little bit later. Material is also a type of component that just kind of comes once you have a mesh renderer and mesh filter. It expects to have a material. These are all automatic things. You don't have to worry too much about this. But yeah, you're in isometric mode, right?
No.
Okay, so you click this thing. See where it says we have top now, but if you just click where it says top right there. Yeah, so now you're in perspective. So before you were in isometric. So let me explain that because that happens sometimes. If you click here in this top right under these gizmos, you see that? That's isometric mode. So isometric mode is more for like architects and stuff. There's no depth or perspective on anything. And then there's depth, but there's no perspective. Meaning that like, you see like this plane, just like the front and the back are like going straight. Whereas in real life, things are in perspective. So things in the front are larger, whereas things in the back are smaller. So the use case for isometric is if you're really trying to perfectly position. It's basically orthographic, if you're used to that term in Blender and stuff. But yeah, so now I explained components a little bit. And again, like you don't have to worry too much about it right now. But the reason why I explained it is we're gonna add a physics component to these objects. And that's what's gonna give it physics. So that's kind of like the magic of Unity, is everything's really organized and clean. And components give these behaviors to objects. So if you notice right now, at the top of the program right here, you have a play button, pause button. So if you click the play button right now, it should just show you something like this, just a blank scene, just kind of like doing nothing, basically. But what this is doing right now, it's actually simulating the program, so it's running. But we just don't have any behaviors yet.
Oh, mine just did. Like, jumped up.
You jumped up? Oh, so the reason is because probably where your camera is located. So if we just unpress play, so it's not pause to close it, but just press play again to exit that. Now, whatever you see in the game view, and you can click the game view right here to kind of preview what you're about to see when you press play. This is just a helpful trick, and it's good to rearrange your scene like this. I want you to grab this game view and just pull it over here on this half of the project view. So this is like kind of like you can rearrange your workspace like that. So just this tab, this game tab, just pull it and put it down here. And now we can kind of have like a live preview of our game, basically. So when you have that, if you click now the main camera that you have in the scene, if you move it around, you'll notice how that happens.
Oh, so the camera was below the plane.
Exactly.
Got it.
So put it somewhere, put the camera somewhere where you could kind of see what's going on in your scene.
Yep.
And now what I want you to do is I want you to take this cube that we just made, and I want to kind of turn it into walls around our scene. So we're just going to do a little basic practice of making just a very basic scene. So the quickest way to make a cube into a wall is to use the scale tool on the cube and just kind of scale it like that, something like that, to make it into a wall-like looking structure. Something like this. So, this is just a quick practice, and just kind of make these walls like I'm doing. And you should already kind of know the move and the rotate tool. So just scale it up like this, and then when you have like a wall that's scaled like this, I want you to copy and paste it. So just Control C, Control V, or Command C, Command V. Another way to duplicate is you can Control D or Command D to duplicate, and then you can pull it out like that. So when you copy it, the copy will be directly on top of the object that you copied, and then you just move it out. And I want you to kind of make a scene similar to this. And maybe just leave one wall open for our viewers. Something like this. Now if you want to rotate by 90 degree perfectly. You can also type it in here. You can make sure it's like 90 degrees, negative 90 degrees, or whatever it kind of expects to get. So you just eye it out. It doesn't have to be like...
It's so hard to do this without a mouse.
It's a little tricky, but if you want, I could probably grab you a mouse.
Sorry,
You want a
do you
mouse?
want a mouse?
I can grab you one.
Thank you so much. Another question I have
Yeah.
is, how do you efficiently move these things around?
So what do you want to do with them?
Like, if I want to lock them down on the just to create the...
So you could, do you want to rotate them? Is that what you're trying to do? No, so that's the scale. Yeah, so, you rotate them.
You have to do it manually.
So if you want to, get the precision, you can always tweak the angles right here. So see, it's 92. Maybe make that to negative 90, for example, to get like that perfect 90 degree. And then here, 180, for example. And then that one would be 0, I'd say, the X. It's probably... Yeah, so now it's like that. Now you can maybe delete those, and then you can work with that one that's already kind of like perfectly aligned. It's a pretty trippy picture. zoom in and out of it?
Sometimes, like, I was making the wall over there, and then it looked like it was on like that.
So that's why you gotta kind of get used to navigating around with that right click, and then just like kind of always just zooming in and out, looking at it from 5-6 different angles, because that happens. You could, you know, you might be in one position and it looks like, but then when you get close to it, you're like completely like a mile away. Yeah, so just kind of get used to whenever you make a movement or something, look at it from one angle, another angle, and then you eventually will kind of nail it and get it in the right place. So this is a kind of, oops, sorry. This is kind of a great practice to arrange a scene.
But for you to move objects, you
Mhm.
only do the most, right? It's not like Photoshop how you can move an inch. With like,
You can. So you can tweak the position over here.
what?
See? Like if you want to move it, you know, 2, 3, 4. So in unit spaces, in world unit space.
But then you can't like manually adjust it with the keypad.
Oh, you mean like you kind of want to do it like that?
Slowly, so you can-
No, not quite. It's a little bit different now. What you could do, look, you can also drag it over here, like this. But there is no, not as far as I know, like to nudge like that. You'll see that when you're going to be working with Unity projects, you'll see that that's actually would be a drawback to do it to nudge like that, because it takes forever to move something. Sure. Just let me know when you have this kind of set up, and then we'll do this physics thing real quick, and then we'll take a break. It doesn't have to be perfect. Close enough? Everyone close enough? Alright, so I want you to grab this sphere that should be like kind of in the wall, like this, something like that. And then scroll all the way down over here, and you'll see where there should be another component. It says add component button. There's two ways to do this. This is one way. You can click add component, and then you could search for the component you want. Another way you can do it while having your object selected is up here in the menu. You see component. There's all these different components. Up here right next to the game object, it says component. So go to physics, rigid body. It's the first one right there, and click that, and that will give your sphere something called a rigid body component. Now what a rigid body is, it's basically like the simplest type of physics object. It's an object that has mass, it has angular drag, it has all the stuff that you would expect from physics. It reacts to gravity. It can even have a bounciness. There's some settings you can do and stuff. So But it's basically what makes the object react to physics. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to take this sphere and with that already has that rigid body and all that good stuff, and then I want you to just copy and paste it like this, just kind of like above itself, like that. Maybe like 4 of them. Did you put the rigid body on?
No.
So you click the sphere, and then you go to component. Oh, yeah. Right next to game object, it says component. At the top, it's a menu. Right next to
Oh,
it. Yeah. And then physics, rigid body. That's it. And then just now you take the sphere and you copy it. Now, if you notice that if your arrows, so if your arrows look like, maybe if your arrows are like,
No.
if they're like this, that's because that's the local of the object. One quick way to change if you're working in the local space or the global space is to click the local global setting right there. And then you could, even though your object maybe is tilted like that in local space, you can still move it up perfectly in global space.
What is local space?
So local space is like, think of like every object has a front facing. So like, say you have a character, he's got 2 arms and his face is right here. So if you rotate him up, his local orientation is up. So if you're pulling him forward, his forward might be this, whereas the world forward is always what it is. You get what I mean?
Yeah, and how do you toggle between those two?
So usually you can tell like if you're trying to move an object up or something like that, and you see that the arrows aren't really facing in the direction they should be.
Okay. You just click on that up there, that toggles.
And then that toggle's working within global space. They're both useful. Sometimes you really need the local adjustment. If something's facing a certain direction, you just want it to go forward in that direction. You don't want it to go, the global forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, once you have these 4, now if you press play, you should see this. Oh, they kind of just stack neatly on top of each other. But if I pull one under it, it'll do that. Right? So how about instead of neatly stacking them like that, just kind of, just a slight offset them just a little bit, just so that they're kind of bundled like that.
So once rigid body selected, you can Control C and copy and paste?
Yeah, so once you have the rigid body on that object, so that object is now a physics object, yeah, then you just kind of copy and paste it, above each other. And just be careful to not grab it by the middle. Always kind of grab it by the specific arrow. That way you make sure you're, yeah. And then just do the same thing. And just kind of offset them just slightly left and right a little bit. You can do the same thing with the barrel. You can click the barrel, component, physics, rigid body.
And you want to see the fall happen, just press play.
Yep. Now, if you're doing it with the barrel doesn't have a collider. So the barrel, if I press play, because I just put a rigid body on it, watch what happens with the barrel. Falls through the ground. The reason is because it doesn't have a collider. Even though the barrel is the shape of a barrel in 3D, it doesn't have this little green, you see that green outline around an object? That's something called the collider. So that's like the actual shape of the object in physics. So to give this barrel a shape, you should do component, physics, and I think mesh collider would work for this one. Let me just make sure I'm not wrong about that. Yeah. So a mesh collider tries to get the collider of the shape of what the actual object's shape is. Putting a sphere collider on a barrel wouldn't really make sense, or a box collider wouldn't really make sense on a sphere, for example. Notice.
If you did that, things flying, so wouldn't they pass through until they hit the sphere?
So check it out. So if I put like a box collider, for example, and if I just tilt this barrel over like so, right? And now you see how the collider is kind of a little bit out of the barrel. If I just stack this like this, and I press play, I don't know if it'll fall. You would expect that to roll over each other, right? But it doesn't, because see, the actual shape is doing that.
Yeah.
So to avoid that, we're gonna use a mesh collider. So it's in physics, mesh collider, and then one important setting to do is to select convex. Now, convex, and you'll see the green lines will draw themselves. So the reason why you have to do convex for mesh colliders is because sometimes some objects can be concave. So what that means is, just in simple terms, it's like a concave object is like, maybe it's like has a flat surface and then it has an indent inside. Whereas a convex object is just has no like interfacing angles, if that makes sense. Like, I'll draw it out. So this is an example of like convex object. This is a concave object, right? So when you check that convex, what that basically does is it does this. It just kind of like fills that in. You get it? So, the reason why you have to do that for an object that you're expecting to roll around and stuff like a barrel is because it needs to know how to react with other objects. And the way that the great computers are programmed to do physics now is they just cannot do this. They can't do convex. Like, it would take so much calculations to actually do accurate physics with convex. But convex does work if you have something like a building, like, some pillars or whatever, and you got like some stairs here and all that. So this works if it's just standing still. This building isn't rolling around, it's standing still, and then you get these spheres falling, and they will work. But the moment you want this building to fall on other buildings, it has to be convex, if that makes sense. So it just remember that, like, if you want the object to roll around, if you want it to move and react to physics, it has to have a convex collider. So now if I do this barrel, and if I just kind of place a few barrels on top of each other like this, they will react like barrels actually should, like that. So I'll press play. See that? They're just rolling off each other. Now, one fun thing you can do while you're already in play mode. So now let me explain just something about Unity. So everything you do in play mode is just for testing. So watch this. So if I just select like one of the barrels and I just start pasting it here, you see that? Now notice, pay attention. If I just unpress play, they're all gone. It goes back to how I started my seed. The reason is because play mode, it's doing the simulation of what you kind of set up for it to do. And once you're done simulating, the program sets itself back to its original state. A lot of people make this mistake and they edit their scene around in play mode, and then they exit play mode and they lose all the things that they did. I'm going to just teach you a quick way.
Yeah, that just happened to me.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm going to teach you a quick way to never let that happen to you again, right? So do this, right? Go to Edit up here in the menu and Preferences. And you should see this menu come up. Okay? So that's in Edit. So File, Edit. This should be Edit. Preferences, right around the middle. And then go to Colors. And then see here it says Play Mode Tint. Just change that tint to like, I don't know, like maybe like something green or whatever you want. So now when you press play mode, you see your whole program will kind of be like this. And that's just to kind of remind yourself that you're in play mode and that you shouldn't like be doing major scene changes in play mode. and just make it whatever color is appealing to you. As long as it's just the color is slightly different from yeah. And then to exit play mode, right? So that can be a little confusing sometimes. The pause button doesn't actually exit you out of play mode. So just unpause it. Yeah. So you actually have to unplay. You have to press yeah. And now you're back here. See? So you lost like the walls that you were creating, for example. And that's totally fine. Like I've seen people lose hours of like character design. Yeah, it happens. But that's why the little color trick is a great way to just, you know, yeah, to be mindful, because I know how that can suck sometimes. I've also had in the boot camp too, someone like did like about an hour of class and then they unpressed play and they just lost everything and then had to get them back up to speed. But yeah, we take a short break now and just you know, keep playing around with your scene and grab some tea, water, whatever you guys like, and then we'll continue with some other cool interactions.
Why did that prefab, was it like a cube with a sphere?
I think you might have both in one.
Oh,
And also pull that.
I dragged them.
You probably dragged it in it, right? So you know, so you just pull it into the scene, just so we can see it. You know what? I think this is the preview. Looks like that. What if you grab that sphere and just save it as a prefab, overwrite that one? Just, yeah. It's just, I think it was just weird. It just bugged out. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
What do you think so far?
Oh, I love it. It's all so much easier.
Right. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. So can you say I wanted this to be like an actual fireball. I wanted it to blow like liquid fire. How would you do that?
So there's some little tricks and stuff that you can do, but
We'll get into that kind of stuff later.
we will. We'll do particle systems and other things.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. You can do it with particle systems. You can do it with certain types of materials and stuff. But yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's great. All right, go to the bathroom real quick.
So you're liking this so far. I hope it's not too beginner for you.
What?
I hope it's not too beginner for you.
Oh no. But I still find navigating really hard. So basically, when you zoom in, where this pointing is where it goes.
No, that's just, don't even look at that. That's you're always going forward, so
Yeah.
wherever you're kind of facing.
Okay.
Now, if you want to go faster, you can hold shift to like going forward. That's a way to go much faster, for example.
So what if I want to switch from here to like an upper view?
I would usually just do, I would like just go up here
Uh-huh.
and then look down.
Oh, okay.
But you could, do it like with one of these
Mhm.
too.
But sometimes when I click this, I'm like super off.
That's because you're, I'm not sure how you can with this, kind of middle mouse. But same thing, you can hold this, hold right click, and then A or D.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
And then if you wanna, now, if you do S, you'll go up, because it goes backwards. So if you want it to go, you have to turn it, and then you go to A. You have to go in that direction. You know what I mean? Like if you're trying to go, left and right,
Mhm.
yeah. So then you can turn it 90 degrees and then go there. And you hold shift to go faster, for
And then
example.
and then if I want to go down and then
Yeah, so it's just getting used to the kind of first person aspect. So
Yeah.
you're, so
I don't play games. So
Yeah.
pretty neat.
Yeah, that's the idea. You're kind of moving like your center point, and then if you want to go above, then you kind of are there, then you just look down. Yeah, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing was designed to be a game engine, but I still remember when it was primarily that. But one of the first things I actually had to do with it was to make an app with it, and I found it was like it's actually a really great tool for like pulling the camera, drawing stuff 3D on top of the camera. I mean, there's nothing compares to Unity
Yeah.
to do that kind of stuff. Show you a neat trick. I'm gonna pause this.